Hello everyone, welcome back to English Pod. My name is Marco.
And my name is Catherine, and today we are talking about an important holiday the world over.
It's very important all over the world, especially in the United States. So let's take a look at this holiday in Vocabulary Preview.
Vocabulary Preview.
So the name of the holiday is Veterans Day. So
Okay.
veteran.
So what's a veteran?
A veteran is a person who has participated in a war or in some kind of military situation.
Okay, so Veterans Day is a day where you commemorate all the people that fought in the different wars.
Exactly. A veteran doesn't have to be a World War II veteran. They could be a Civil War veteran or a Vietnam War veteran.
Okay.
It's just a general
Or a Gulf
term.
War.
Exactly.
All right, so that's the day in the United States where everyone honors all the soldiers that participated in different wars and they fought for their country. Mm-hmm. All right, so why don't we take a look at our dialogue for the first time, and we'll be back.
Do you have any plans for Veterans Day?
You mean Armistice Day?
What are you talking about? November 11th is Veterans Day. What planet are you from?
Well, as you know, on November 11th, the Allies signed a peace treaty with the Germans, also known as the Armistice Treaty. This marked the end of World War I, and many countries around the world commemorated this date under names such as Remembrance Day. In Poland, it's their Independence Day. There's a lot going on around the world on this day.
Wow, I didn't know. Probably because I flunked history in school.
All right, so there's a lot of really great vocabulary in this elementary lesson. So let's take a look at some of these words and phrases in Language Takeaway.
Language Takeaway.
All right, so the first word that came up after the guy mentioned Veterans Day, the girl mentioned Armistice Day.
Armistice.
Okay, so what is this Armistice Day?
Armistice means to stop fighting, right? So it's a time in which people lay down their arms, we say. Mm-hmm. And it's one that's celebrated in Commonwealth countries like England or Canada and in parts of Europe.
Okay, very good. So Armistice Day, kind of like the equivalent for Commonwealth countries to Veterans Day. Mm-hmm. All right. And, well, the girl gave him a bit of a history lesson and mentioned that on November 11th, the Allies signed a peace treaty. So we have two great words here, allies.
So allies is a word that we use in English to indicate people who fought against the Germans, Italians, and Japanese in World War II. Mm-hmm. So allies include Great Britain, America, France for some time. So these are countries and Russia, they were fighting against the Germans.
Right. So, and in general terms, an ally is a friend, right?
Exactly. So
the opposite
Marco and I are allies. If there's a fight, I'm on his side.
The opposite of enemies.
Exactly.
Very good. And, well, the Allies signed a peace treaty. So what is a peace treaty?
A treaty is a document that outlines new rules for a situation. And a peace treaty is a document that calls for peace. It says, we will not fight anymore. Mm-hmm. We will have peace. And this is what this means. So we have new rules.
So it's an agreement. It's like a contract. Basically.
Exactly. It's a contract between nations.
Okay, very good. All right. And as we mentioned, Veterans Day or Armistice Day, we commemorate these events that happened in the past. So to commemorate something.
Right. So in this sense, we are honoring it. So to commemorate is to remember, to honor, to
remember with respect.
To remember with respect. Exactly. There's a positive, respectful tone here. Mm-hmm. It's remembering for a good reason.
Okay. Very good. So we've taken a look at these four words. Why don't we listen to our dialogue again? And we'll be back in a bit to look at Fluency Builder.
Do you have any plans for Veterans Day?
You mean Armistice Day?
What are you talking about? November 11th is Veterans Day. What planet are you from?
Well, as you know, on November 11th, the Allies signed a peace treaty with the Germans, also known as the Armistice Treaty. This marked the end of World War I, and many countries around the world commemorated this date under names such as Remembrance Day. In Poland, it's their Independence Day. There's a lot going on around the world on this day.
Wow, I didn't know. Probably because I flunked history in school.
Today's Fluency Builder includes a couple of really interesting phrases that are kind of longer. So let's take a look at the first one, which is very, very common in English.
All right, so this first sentence was kind of using a sarcastic tone because he said, "What are you talking about?"
Right, so this guy says, Veterans Day? Oh, you mean Armistice Day? He says, what are you talking about? That means, no, I mean Veterans Day.
Right. So he wasn't really asking, like, what are you talking about? He was literally saying with this sentence, are you crazy? Or like,
You're wrong.
You're wrong. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So what are you talking about is a way, very sarcastic way to say, listen, I think you're wrong, or you must be a little bit crazy here.
Right. What are you talking about? All right. And then to end the whole sarcastic sentence there, he said, what planet are you from?
So obviously this is Veterans Day. What planet are you from? So you're so wrong. How do you not understand what this is?
How do you not know this?
Right. And so, for example, I could say, maybe I'll ask you, Marco, who's the president of the United States?
All right. I can say, well, what planet are you from? It's obviously President Obama.
Oh, duh. So it's like, obviously everybody knows this. And so
Right.
you're saying, how do you not how do you not know this already?
So it's very sarcastic. What planet are you from?
And finally, the guy is talking about how he doesn't understand what the meaning of Veterans Day is. And after this long explanation, he says, well, I didn't know. Probably because I flunked history in
Right.
school.
So if you flunked history or you flunked any subject in school, it means you didn't pass.
Exactly. So to flunk is a verb in English, and it means to fail a subject. That means maybe in 100% is perfect, you got 50% or
Right.
40%, and you have to take the course again.
Okay. Did you ever flunk an exam in school?
No.
No, really? You didn't? Never?
No.
Wow. Such a good student.
Did you?
Maybe I did maybe once or twice.
I was much too self-critical.
All right, let's listen to this dialogue again and we'll be back in a bit.
Do you have any plans for Veterans Day?
You mean Armistice Day?
What are you talking about? November 11th is Veterans Day. What planet are you from?
Well, as you know, on November 11th, the Allies signed a peace treaty with the Germans, also known as the Armistice Treaty. This marked the end of World War I, and many countries around the world commemorated this date under names such as Remembrance Day. In Poland, it's their Independence Day. There's a lot going on around the world on this day.
Wow, I didn't know. Probably because I flunked history in school.
All right, so Veterans Day, it's a big deal in the United States, right?
It's a very big deal.
There's a parade.
Yeah, in most cities in the country, there are parades. And when I was in school, we had to play music because I was in band. We used to play music for the veterans, and we would go to the cemetery and play taps. Da 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 da. Oh no, we didn't play taps. It was. Da, na, na, da, na, na.
That's like the funeral song. I don't know.
Yeah,
what
we
that's
would
called.
play funeral songs and taps for the local veterans who would be respecting and commemorating fallen soldiers.
Wow, and the president talks as well, like on national TV.
That's
and
right.
Stuff.
That's right.
All right. So it's very interesting, especially the history lesson. The fact that on November, I think it's called 11/11/11, right? November 11th at 11 o'clock, they signed this armistice treaty.
And that was in 1918. So this is World War I. We're talking about when the world had never really seen fighting like this before.
Right.
And so everyone was just relieved when what they called the Great War was finally over.
It's a very interesting history lesson. So I'm sure many people have some opinions on this. So we would be glad to hear it from you on our website at englishpod.com. You can also leave questions or comments, and we'll see you guys there.
And let us know, do you celebrate this holiday in your country?
Yep. All right.
Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
An agreement to stop a war. Armistice. agreement, treaty, memorize, commemorate, fail in exams, flunk,
Let's try that faster.
memorize, commemorate, an agreement to stop a war, armistice, agreement, treaty, fail in exams, flunk,
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
armistice, the two nations signed an armistice. Armistice. The key aspect in an armistice is the fact that all fighting ends with no one surrendering. Armistice. The Korean War armistice was a major example of an armistice which was not followed by a peace treaty. Armistice. Pain is remembrance. You cannot forget pain. Armistice. Nothing is more fatal to happiness than the remembrance of happiness. Armistice. If it seems a childish thing to do it in remembrance that you are a child. Treaty. This commerce treaty will bring prosperity between our great nations. Treaty. We shall sign a peace treaty with the invaders. Treaty. This treaty is not valid until I sign it. Commemorate. We are gathered here today to commemorate the lives sacrificed in an act of heroism. Commemorate. On November 11th, we commemorate the fallen with a march. Commemorate. The cenotaph commemorates the fallen. Flunk. I just found out that I flunked in math. Flunk. If you flunk any school subject, you will be screwed. Flunk. I really hope the teacher doesn't flunk me.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling a pretty big question.
Okay.
Yeah, a really big one.
All right, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
What is goodness?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is, right?
Yeah.
So just the question itself, what is goodness, is all we have to work with today.
Interesting.
I know, right?
So no philosophers,
Nope.
no ethical frameworks,
It's
just
just the question.
the question itself.
Yeah, but that's what I think makes it so interesting for this deep dive.
I see what you mean.
Because
Yeah,
it's so open-ended, right?
totally.
Like, what is goodness?
Mm.
Are we talking about, like, moral philosophy? Are we talking about,
Or ethical actions.
ethical actions? Are we talking about just, like,
Being a good person.
yeah, being a good person? Or, like, is it something that you feel?
Ooh, that's interesting.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So it's so open to interpretation.
It is. And it's amazing how, like, a simple question like this can bring up so many complex ideas.
Yeah, like, right away I start thinking about philosophy and psychology and,
Yeah.
sociology and,
It's all connected.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to pose this question to everyone listening right now. Like, when you hear that question, what is goodness? What's the first thing that pops into your head?
That's a good question.
Is it a feeling?
Right.
Is it an action? Is it a person?
A memory.
Yeah.
Like, what is it for you?
Yeah, think about that for a second.
Yeah. And I think it's really helpful, to kind of try to define this word goodness because it's such an abstract concept.
Yeah.
So we can maybe think about it like in terms of actions, like doing something that aligns with like a moral code, whether that's your personal code or like a shared code by a group or a community.
Okay, so that makes me think about like, helping someone in need.
Exactly.
Like that's a good action, right?
Right.
But then is goodness also about who we are at our core?
Oh, absolutely.
Like our inherent traits.
Yeah.
So like honesty,
Compassion.
kindness,
Yeah.
all of those things.
There's also goodness. Yeah. That's where it gets really interesting because now we're talking about character.
Uh-huh.
Like the qualities that make someone a good person, even when nobody's watching.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where like ideas like virtue ethics come into play.
Okay, so virtue ethics, that sounds super academic.
It is a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's really fascinating.
Could you break it down a little for us?
Sure. So basically, virtue ethics is about focusing on cultivating good character traits within ourselves.
Okay.
So think about virtues like courage, honesty, justice, wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that by developing these virtues, you naturally become more inclined to act good.
Okay, so it's not so much about like following rules.
Right.
It's more about like building that inner foundation that then leads to those good choices.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process of self-improvement, striving to become the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
But of course, there are other approaches too, like utilitarianism.
Oh, yeah, utilitarianism.
Which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So utilitarianism, I remember this like the greatest good for the greatest number.
Exactly.
So how does that fit into this whole goodness puzzle that we're trying to figure out?
Right. So utilitarianism is all about maximizing happiness and well-being for as many people as possible.
Okay.
So a good action is one that produces the most positive outcome,
I see.
even if it means making like difficult choices or sacrifices along the way.
So like even holding the door for somebody, a utilitarian would say that's good because you're creating this little like moment of happiness.
Right.
But they're also thinking about the bigger picture,
Exactly.
right? Like how do our actions impact society as a whole?
And that's where things can get tricky. Because what if helping one person means neglecting the needs of many others?
Right.
Utilitarianism forces us to grapple with these complex dilemmas.
Yeah, this is a lot.
It is.
It's giving me a lot to think about. I hope it's giving all of you listening a lot to think about too.
Maybe.
But here's the thing, even with all these different frameworks, ultimately how we define goodness is deeply personal.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's a question we all have to wrestle with throughout our lives.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of it is there's no single right answer.
Exactly.
Like you and I could have totally different definitions
Absolutely.
of goodness, and that's fine.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of it is that just by asking the question, just by trying to define it for ourselves, it makes us more thoughtful.
Yes.
It makes us more aware.
More aware of our choices and their impact.
Exactly.
Yes.
So as we wrap up today's deep dive, we want to leave you with one final question to ponder.
Okay.
If you had to define goodness on your own terms, what would it be?
Wow.
What principles would guide your actions? What qualities would you strive to embody? Let that question be the starting point for your own exploration, your own personal deep dive into the meaning of goodness.
I love that.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.